How is it rocking, Dween Nation? Stay here because we are just about to get underway. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. We put out weekly sports content, and we want to continue to build up Dween Nation and the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudela, and we are back. It's week 4, and we got fantasy forecasts rolling out for you in this episode. We're going to go through the first 8 games. So Thursday night is right upon us. So we're going to jump right into it. But before we do, Genoa, how you feeling?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, I'm doing so great. It is week 4. Such an exciting week in there. We have a pretty great primetime game here on Sunday night, and we have a doubleheader on Monday night.
Yes.
I'm just so excited for this fantasy week there. There's a league where I need to win against you. There's our $250 league where I need to get another win to kind of get back in those standings. And every win matters, Justin. It doesn't matter what it is here in the season. In fantasy, every win matters because when we get down to week 13 and week 14, that's when it gets very close and playoff seedings are right around the corner. So every week matters, Justin, as well as, not just fantasy, but just regular, NFL. Every win matters there.
Yeah.
Just for the end of the playoffs, for those seedings, the divisional, titles, every win matters. So I'm so excited. And I'm ready to get right down into it, Justin.
Yeah, and I can't wait. Week 4 is the last week before bye weeks start.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of there's been a lot of injuries, but this is these first 4 weeks are like when everybody's got kind of their full strength. Now you're going to go into weeks where, hey, I'm playing Genoa and he doesn't have Saquon, and I'm like so happy, or vice versa. Or I don't have, whoever, Jonathan Taylor, exactly. Yeah. So this is the last week before it's going to start getting, you're going to need to make even more difficult decisions in your lineups because you won't have the option of your top players at some weeks. So let's dive into week 4. In the week 4 slate of games, starting with Thursday Night Football, Dallas at the New York Giants. Clearly, there's some names of must-start players. You got Dak Prescott, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got, to me, Jake Ferguson's a must-start, Malik Neighbors on the Giants side, and then there's probably a few names that are worth discussing. For one, you got Rico Dowdle. I think he's the biggest of the Cowboys running back names that I would start if I had to pick one of them. And I think, finally, over the last 2 weeks, the Cowboys have had, they've been down in these games against the Saints and the Ravens. They haven't needed to run the ball. And so I think this week will be a lot different playing against a Giants team where I think Dallas and Rico Dowdle will have a good game this week. He will score a touchdown. He will get 12 to 17 carries. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 or even top 10 running back on the week, but I think he's a very solid flex or even low-end RB2. And then on the flip side, the other running back in this situation, Devin Singletary, who's had 2 straight good weeks, one against a really hard defense, one against an easy one. He goes against now what is ranked as the worst running defense in the NFL right now. They had a big game with Derrick Henry and, of course, Kamara over the last 2 weeks. I don't foresee anything like that for Singletary, but I think he has a solid floor to go maybe around 8 to 12 points.
Yeah, Justin, I agree. I actually like Singletary to score a touchdown tonight. Not too much there on the ground. I don't think he goes over 50 yards there. But a Giant that I'm so excited to talk about is none other than Malik Neighbors. Justin, he has a chance by the end of tonight to lead the NFL in receiving yards. He's right now 5th with 271. And obviously, Nico Collins is currently questionable going into this weekend's matchup, might not play. I don't think Juwan Jennings is going to repeat what he did last week, who's 3rd in receiving yards. Justin Jefferson, obviously he's one of the best receivers in the league, but he is facing Jair Alexander this weekend. Still like Jefferson, though, to have a great matchup. And Rashee Rice is number 2. He's gonna continue to get the volume and the target, so I'm not worried about Rashee Rice. But Malik Neighbors, Justin, he has been so fun to watch these first 3 weeks of the season. Even has 13 touchdowns there to go along with 23 catches. That's pretty crazy there, Justin. So I do believe he is top 5 in catches. I want to say he's actually 2 under Rashee Rice with catches there. So definitely very impressive for the rookie out of LSU who, out of these top 5, wide receivers with Nico at 1, Rashee Rice at 2, Juwan Jennings at 3, Jay Jettis at 4, and Malik at 5, he has the worst quarterback. So, there's CJ, Mahomes, Purdy, and Sam Darnold, who's having a revelation in his career, you can make the arguments that Malik Neighbors is playing, great with nothing. Obviously,
Right.
in that Giants offense, there isn't really other playmakers there. Maybe Singletary is probably the second best playmaker on that offense. But Malik Neighbors is shining in that offense. I'm so excited to see him tonight. I really hope he doesn't have a quiet night. I hope he, gives the fantasy, people what they have. And I'm not saying this from bias, Justin, because believe it or not, I don't have Malik Neighbors in any fantasy leagues at all. I'm in 5 fantasy leagues this year, 4, regular ESPN, and 1 our dynasty league.
Right.
I don't have Neighbors in any one of them. I'm not facing him in it, so it's there's no good or bad to it. But as an NFL fan, I'm so excited to see Malik Neighbors play tonight. He's been sensational. I've been impressed. Looking over on the Dallas side, obviously, like I mentioned, we're starting Dak, Ferguson, and CeeDee Lamb. I like Ferguson to kind of put his stat tonight. Obviously, he kind of been battling a little bit of a knee injury. Was able to play and have a good game last week against Baltimore. And so, I think this game could be closer than we think. But part of me also feels like last year in Week 1, the Cowboys started off in New York and pretty much demolished them. It wasn't even close. It was a blowout. And, you could make the argument to start Dallas Cowboys defense. If we're going to pick a winner, I'm going to take the Cowboys 28-19. They've had a shaky couple weeks since winning Week 1. And I think they kind of bounced back today.
I agree. I have them winning 23-17. So I think it will be closer than we think. And I think one more thing to cover with Dak, because Dak, he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback, but some people might have those decisions to make. I have one in our Elite 250 league where I'm starting Kyler over him. So if that helps you guys, Dween Nation, where the line is, I'd start Kyler, I'd start Jaden Daniels. I'd start Dak over CJ though, probably this week. That actually maybe not. I'd probably go CJ and then Dak. Oh man, there's a couple names. I even like Joe Burrow over Dak this week. But it kind of ends around there. I'd start him over anything like Kirk or Purdy or Love. So if that helps you, Dween Nation, we both have Cowboys winning this game. Moving to the next game, we have the New Orleans Saints at the Atlanta Falcons. And this game's interesting. Obviously, a division matchup. We saw both of them lose close games last week. The Falcons, to me, was the one that was more surprising because I thought the Chiefs might, destroy them and win by a lot, but it came down to the last drive, and the Falcons got stopped on a 4th and 1. So any given Sunday they were close to kind of beating the champs, but now they get to host the Saints, who also lost a close one where they were in control of the game for most of it, or at least in the small lead. They're up 3-0 at half, but they lose to a late drive by the Eagles, and now coming into this, I like a lot of the players in this matchup. Bijan Robinson, I think obviously must start. Drake London, I think you got to start him. He's been the red zone target for Kirk Cousins as of the last couple of weeks, even though they're somewhat concerned due to the fact that he's not getting a bunch of yards. He's gotten a touchdown in each of the last 2 weeks, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this incredible play, or oh my gosh, he got 100 yards, or he's got eight or 9 catches. It's been 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown, which is fine. But I think he's a start, especially where you drafted him. Kirk Cousins, I probably wouldn't jump on the starting train with him in fantasy this week. And then Kyle Pitts, you probably have to start just because there's not a lot of great tight ends out there. Jumping to New Orleans, got to start Kamara. I know he didn't practice today or he didn't practice yesterday, but if he's active, you play him. If he's not, I'd be interested in Jamal Williams. I think he could be like a flex play. Not much higher than that, though. And then Olave must start. Derek Carr's worth the start, I think, if you have him, and he's below the Dak tier, obviously, in fantasy starts this week, but I think worth the start. Maybe even in your DFS lineups would be good. And then again, the last guy to talk about would be Rashid Shaheed, who had a fat goose last week. I think the story about Shaheed will be it'll be luck. It'll be you pick a week and he's not going to do good that week, or you pick a week where he gets a 60-yard touchdown and you're happy. So I think that's it depends on you. If you want to take the risk, you jump on the Rashid Shaheed train. What do you think?
Yeah, Justin, Raheed, like you mentioned, we have buys in the next, from here all the way to week 13, 14. Rashid Shaheed is a guy that you're going to be able to, start once buys happen. I know the Lions, the Eagles kind of have buys the next couple weeks, so that means like guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are injured and they'll be on their buys, and so things like that will kind of play into effect on yes, I'll start Rashid Shaheed. If guys like Amari Cooper and George Pickens and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, guys like that, they're struggling. Um, Maybe you can slide them in. So Rashid Shaheed, it's also based on Derek Carr. I feel like they kind of work hand in hand. If Rashid Shaheed is not playing well, neither is Derek Carr, and the Saints aren't winning. So if Rashid Shaheed is playing well, he's doing his best, then you know what? They have a chance to win this game. And I think they will. I think they'll get back on track. I mentioned in the Rapids, kind of episode, Rapids pick, something about this Falcons offense feels weird. It doesn't feel like they're clicking. It doesn't even feel like how Kirk Cousins was with his first couple of years with Justin Jefferson, and they had 1 year with Dalvin Cook, and they were clicking on all cylinders with Hawkinson. There's just something off about this Falcons offense. I don't really know what it is. I'm very excited to look at this weekend and dissect this team more. But looking at what they did against Kansas City, obviously the Chiefs are one of the best defenses in the league, best teams overall. But they had a beat. I think they could have won that game. Looking at the week before in Philadelphia, I kind of think Philadelphia gave them that game, and Kirk Cousins was able kind of to capitalize. But even that looked ugly. So there's just something about this Falcons defense or offense that I might struggle against the Saints defense. That's pretty solid. Barely losing to Philadelphia last week, but only allowing 15 points. And so, I'm going to give the Saints the victory here. Atlanta's already lost 2 home games, one to Pittsburgh and one to Kansas City. I think that could be a possibility again. Kirk Cousins is still kind of playing catch up with his health there in that knee. And something tells me, Justin, that this offense in Atlanta would just look a lot more better with Michael Penix Jr. I'm sorry. I feel like the rookie should just show up. I feel like Drake London would be a number 1 receiver. Kyle Pitts would be a number 1 tight end. Bijan would get more catches. And even Mooney would be a great, a wide receiver too, a kind of Chris Godwin of 2019 kind of breakout type of thing. And so, I'm going to give the Saints here a 24-21 victory. I think late in the fourth quarter, Kirk is just struggling. They're not able to move the ball with Bijan. I think Kyle Pitts kind of goes, quiet there. And I'm going to give the Saints there on a bounce back Kamara day. I gave him about, if he plays, receiving and a rushing touchdown there for the victory there in Atlanta for the Saints.
All right, I'm going to be on a little contrary there. I have the Falcons winning this game 20-17, so it's going to be a close one throughout. I agree. The Falcons, I think they haven't unlocked their potential on offense, and I'm going to attribute it to new coach, new offensive coordinator, new scheme, new quarterback, and maybe this week can start even more shedding of the rust, and we'll see if they. I mean, I see them being on track enough to win this game. Moving to the next game, we have the Rams and the Bears. Obviously, the Rams, they surprised last week, came back and beat the 49ers behind the likes of Kyron Williams, had 3 touchdowns in this game. And on the Bears side, they lose a close one to the Colts on the road. But it was ugly through just about 3 quarters for the Bears. The fourth quarter, they were down, and they, Caleb threw, I believe, 1 or 2 touchdowns in that back half of the game to try to catch up. But I expect it to – I mean, the Bears have a good matchup, and hopefully the fact that they started gelling on offense just a little bit can, continue on into this week. But I think it might be still slow just because I think the Bears coaches are really bad. But if you're a fantasy owner and you have some of these Bears players, I think the only one that you can start with somewhat confidence is DJ Moore, maybe Roma Dunze, but he's like a middle to low flex. And then maybe Cole Kmet. He did have 10 catches last week and a touchdown. And if you had Trey McBride, I think Cole Kmet is a very fine replacement there if you picked him up off waivers. And then on the Rams side, you start Kyron Williams, and I'm not starting any other Rams player, even though I do have them winning.
Yeah, Justin, with the Rams, I feel like their offensive line is honestly one of the worst in the league. It just feels like Stafford, doesn't really have much time to throw the football. We kind of saw that a couple weeks ago in Arizona, where he was just under pressure in pretty much the whole game. Looking into last week, I think they barely won, but I think it's just because Kyle Shanahan loves to choke football games. He's a notorious, choker of football games there. But looking, what went down last week, Stafford got sacked for a loss of 23 yards there for only three. He only got sacked 3 times for a negative 23 yards there. So that's kind of a lot. Normally the regular sack, the quarterback gets sacked there, they lose about 3 to 4 yards, but 3 sacks there for 23 yards is pretty crazy there. I don't know, Justin, if you ask me, I think that this Bears pass rush is pretty elite there. Yes, they lost last week in Indianapolis, but they were able to get after AR, having him throw interceptions. The week before, they were, even though they lost to the Texans, they were still able to pressure, my guy in CJ Stroud and only limiting him to 19 points there. And so, this pass rush for Chicago is legit. And it's only about the only thing Eberflus is good at is kind of coaching defense, but pass rushing, not, the secondary. And, you can, I want to give Chicago the victory, but Eberflus, I feel like he's going to get outcoached by the mastermind that is Sean McVay. Sean McVay, even though he's missing Puka and Cooper Kupp, and that offensive line is terrible, and they don't really have a pretty, like, we all want to cheer for, Parkinson as the next, tight end there, now that Higby's gone. I still feel like, McVay, he is still going to be able to outcoach Eberflus. He is such a strategic kind of guy. He's going to find playmakers here now. I feel like that's the reason why we love Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp is because, yes, those two guys are great players, but Sean McVay is such a great offensive mind there that he's going to figure it out. Also, guys like Kyron Williams, who come out of nowhere and become a star. And, Kyron Williams is off to a great start this season. He's literally a top 3 running back in fantasy. And I don't think he's holding back here in Chicago. Jonathan Taylor torched Chicago. I think that Kyron Williams is just a little bit better than Jonathan Taylor this year. Just a little bit.
Interesting.
I like Kyron Williams this week, man. He is on a roll there. I know there was some pushback that, he's going to be returning punts, and they drafted a guy in Blake Corum who was great in Michigan. But you know what? I'm sold on Kyron Williams here. He's one of the guys I think I got a little wrong this year. Maybe we're looking at redrafts in the first couple weeks, Justin. I think I draft him over Bijan or maybe like A.J. Brown or maybe even like C.D. Lamb. I know that's crazy, but, Justin, he's off to a great start there. So I'm going to give the Rams here a close victory. I'm going to give him a 21-19 victory there. I think McVay and Stafford just do just enough. Also, with the Chicago offense, they've been struggling all season, all but one quarter in Indianapolis. So it's not really impressive that, they made a late surge last week. But I think in the next couple of weeks, eventually they start to get it together. But like we mentioned, this coaching staff isn't all that great. So I got the Rams winning.
I have the Rams as well. I have them winning 17-10. And I think it will be on the back of like 2 Kyron touchdowns. As you mentioned, like JT went off last week against the Bears. And I think that's what the Rams are going to have to do to have any success. Moving to the next game, we have the Vikings going into Green Bay. With or without Jordan Love, we still do not know. He is questionable at the moment, working at limited practices. But I think regardless, I think it's going to be a very tight game throughout. In Lambeau, I think Jay Jett is a must start. Aaron Jones is a must start in a revenge game against his former team. Sam Darnold, we talked about, picking him up on your waiver wire. I don't love the matchup. But if you got to start him, it's not like, hey, I think he's going to be an absolute bust or anything. And then moving, I think that's the last guy, even though I feel bad because Jalen Naylor has scored 3 touchdowns in 3 weeks, but I'm still not on the train yet. I don't know if I got to wait for another touchdown or just maybe more volume. I think that's what I'm waiting for, really. And then jumping to the Packers side, Emmanuel Wilson was cut, eaten out of Josh Jacobs' plate. But I think you obviously got to start Josh Jacobs. It is a tougher matchup, but I think it won't be like people are looking maybe at last week. Cam Akers didn't get a ton of carries, but I think it's obviously because the Vikings were up by so much so early on Houston. So Jacobs is a must start. And then I think it somewhat depends. If Jordan Love plays, I will start Jaden Reed, and I'll be happy with starting him. If it's Malik Willis again, I'm starting no Packers wide receiver.
Yeah, Justin, I'm a little concerned now as we get closer to kickoff here. It looked like earlier this week that now Jordan Love was going to play. Now it's looking like he's a game time decision. I'm starting him in our matchup, but I don't know what to do if he doesn't. Hopefully he does play. But for the Vikings side, obviously you're starting Aaron Jones. It's a revenge game. He did great last week. Got to keep starting him. Jetta's, no question, guys, the best receiver in the league right now. Darnold, Green Bay's defense is so tough. I feel like they're going to be able to get to Darnold. So I don't think Darnold has a crazy good game. I think his only touchdown is to Jefferson. Just because Jefferson he's the best receiver in the league there. And I do think he gets the best out of Jair Alexander in this matchup. I do remember 2 years ago in Lambeau, I think it was championship week, week 17, 2022. Jair Alexander was able to clamp Justin Jefferson. Literally not, limiting him to only like 2 to 3 catches, under 30 yards there. It was a really ugly game there for Jefferson. And I think this time, I think Jefferson gets the better of it, and he's playing at an all-time high. He's one of those things now where it kind of reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins early in his career, where it doesn't matter what quarterback he's playing to, as long as he has a pretty decent arm, get the ball to Jefferson, he's going to do the rest. He's going to be able to, create, whether it's on the road or it's at home. And he scored, I think every week of this season, or he's had a great game at least. And so you're starting them. And I'm going to agree with you on the Packers side. Yes, you're going to have to start Jacobs, but that's about it if Jordan Love doesn't play. If Jordan Love does play, we do like Jaden Reed, excuse me. That's about it. Maybe I want to start Green Bay defense. I am starting them in one of our leagues, in our elite league. I'm going to have to start Green Bay defense just because I like that they're home and they've been playing great. But Justin, their 2 victories have came against Indianapolis and Tennessee. So the Packers have still yet to put out an impressive showing there. And so, it's really tough to call this down the middle. I'm going to play it safe and give it to Minnesota just because they're already undefeated. They're playing very well there. Sam Darnold looks to be able to play ready to go. The team looks good, fresh, and so I like Minnesota to steal one.
I think I think a lot of what you're saying I agree with. This one's a tough one to pick the winner because I honestly, even though I like Jay Jettas and Josh Jacobs, I think the defenses are both going to have good games in fantasy. So I think they're both worse starts. The Vikings are currently defense number 1 this season thus far. But I'm gonna go with the Packers winning at home. And it's gonna be close though. I got 22-20. So it's close. Packers get the dub. Moving to the next game, we have the Steelers going into Indianapolis. And I just can't get the thought of how those handful of passes from Anthony Richardson last week were so awful, especially that one right in the end zone. And that's leading me to just lean towards Pittsburgh winning this game. And I think there's going to be a number of sacks from this Pittsburgh defense. I think George Pickens is a great start this week. I think Fields is a great start this week because the Colts defense has been pretty horrendous. And then you would think that, they're just going to ground and pound. That's kind of their identity. Najee Harris, although is expected to play, is limited, and Jaylen Warren's not expected to play. So I don't expect them to just be running it against the Colts. So I think Fields, Pickens, great plays. Najee, if he plays, you should start him because I think Warren's going to miss. And then on the Colts side, you got to start JT. It's a tough matchup. You got to start him. And then I'm really hesitant to start anybody else, even Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Justin, you know what? I'm gonna disagree with you just a little bit. Go on the other side. I like a potential Anthony Richardson bounce back week. You got to remember this is probably going to be his 7th game overall as a NFL quarterback, maybe 7th or 8th kind of game played overall. So he's still kind of learning, still bouncing back from that injury. He is home, and it's against a defense who's been very great. But Justin, we've seen this many times before, where a team is kind of undefeated and they're riding on the road. They kind of lose even if they have a great defense. So I like AR to have a bounce back week here. He's been finding guys like Alec Pierce. And I feel like that's going to help their offense this week. And, Michael Pittman has been struggling. you mentioned that if he doesn't have a good week, you're going to be out. So I think this is the Michael Pittman week that he surprises, that Pittsburgh defense. That's a great game. I'm thinking 6 catches, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns there.
Wow.
And I think JT might get a receiving touchdown. I want to give AR a massive day. Part of me wants to say, oh, Justin, he's going to have 5 total touchdowns. Let's do 3 total touchdowns. Maybe Jonathan Taylor doesn't get that receiving, but he does get a rushing touchdown. I have the close winning 31-21. They have a barrage of points scored on that tough team. Now, if it was in Pittsburgh, I'd pick Pittsburgh, but I think the home crowd in Indianapolis thirsting for another win there against more of a established team rather than Chicago last week. AR has struggled the past 2 weeks, and I think he's bound for a bounce-back week there. I think someone else new maybe scores if it's not, Pittman. Maybe what's the guy that tied in? Granson, I think his name is.
Granson, yeah.
Granson, he's a guy that occasionally AR would look towards. And maybe Adonai Mitchell. I mean, Justin, I love my guy Adonai Mitchell from UT, and it's just a pure shock that he is not getting any looks there whatsoever. I was very excited for him to be kind of that wide receiver 2 to 3. Even got Josh Downs, who, last year was pretty good. He had some good on and off weeks. He's kind of like Rashid Shaheed like last year. And it's kind of sad that they're not feeding these guys. I think AR has a collection of, weapons to throw it to. They don't have any injuries here. I'm looking on the injury report. Everybody seems to be good. Maybe their center is a little bit questionable to play, but I think he'll probably play. But I'm going to give the Colts an upset win there. I think I said, 31-21? I think I'm picking that and going with it.
I'm going to go with Pittsburgh winning 16-13. I think Pittsburgh's identity and most of the games that they're in will be lower scoring and field goals, bounce off back and forth, and I think that's what the score will be. Pittsburgh winning a close one, 16-13. Moving to the next game, we have Denver heading into New York to play the Jets. On the Jets side, you got to start Breece Hall, and then you look at Garrett Wilson, and I have some serious worries about him this week going up against Pat Surtain. Surtain has been locking down wide receivers all season and really all of his career. But, he started week 1. He locked down DK Metcalf to only a couple catches. Then he played Pittsburgh, and I believe he stopped George Pickens. Obviously didn't have a very, very good game. And then last week, Mike Evans has a very poor game against Pat Surtain. So I think Surtain is going to be locked on to Garrett Wilson all week or all day. And I think it's going to be a rough showing for Garrett Wilson. But even with that, I'm not even saying though that I'd go for many of the other wide receivers like Lazard or Mike Williams. But so it's really just for sure start Breece Hall and be very cautious with Garrett Wilson. And then on the Denver side, there's really nobody. There's really nobody I'm excited about. We saw Tyler Bidet be the most exciting running back in the Broncos backfield, but I need to really see who can kind of establish a clear role with this, Broncos backfield for me to buy in. And then with my beloved Javonte Williams, a guy who I've been really behind since he got into the league, we talked about it. If it doesn't happen this week, I'm probably out, and it's an average matchup. So it doesn't look good for him.
Yeah, Justin, I'm a little bit worried about his starting status. I mean, will he be the starter? Even last year, it was a lot of Jaleel McLaughlin and even Samaje Perine, had a lot of touches last year in that backfield. So, Samaje Perine is no longer on the team. He's in Kansas City. And McLaughlin is kind of like a guy that, Sean Payton is kind of eyeing to give more touches. And you mentioned Tyler, Bad Eye?
Bidet.
Bidet.
Yeah.
Bidet. Okay. He got some rushes last week that's going to get him, some more volume. So I'm very worried. And not only that, they're going to get up against this tough Jets defense who Justin literally locked for Ramondre Stevenson last week to 0.3, not 3, 0.3 fantasy points there. That is unbelievably concerning, but impressive on the New York Jets side. And Javonte's been struggling all season so far. It's hard to believe that he pops off against this Jets defense, who, by the way, might be one of the starts of the week there as far as defenses, Justin.
Yeah.
And I feel like last week was a fluke of a win. Guys, if y'all know me here at Doing Sports, I am so anti Baker Mayfield, and I just knew that Baker Mayfield was going to crumble against a team like Denver at home. So I'm not worried about the Jets this week. I feel like Denver's offense is going to return to normal and just being mediocre. And I think the Jets, they had a couple days to rest. And Aaron Rodgers, himself has had extra days to rest. I feel like offense is being able to move. And Justin, I'm actually smelling a 2-touchdown performance from Braylon Allen. I
Wow.
do think Brees Hall has 100 yards rushing as well. But I just feel like this guy, Braylon Allen, there is something about this guy who, you know what? He might be a guy that I don't know what to expect, but I'm smelling like a Jahmyr Gibbs kind of role in the future. I think that a lot of teams are kind of headed that in the next couple of years, it's going to be where each team has two fantastic running backs. And Braylon Allen, I mean, this guy, I mean, I don't want to hope for injuries, but if someday, let's take injuries out. If Brees Hall were to get traded, this guy, Braylon Allen, would be a number one back here. Obviously, Brees Hall's not getting traded. He is a stud himself. I just like this guy, Braylon Allen. I mean, he just looks sensational. If he was his backfield, I think he'd be one up there for Rookie of the Year. And I think Rodgers is going to be looking at him to throw some passes out of the backfield. A little bit of a dump-off guy there, kind of being their second, third receiver. And they got guys like Conklin, the guy that you earlier this offseason was high on. And, Mike Williams is getting back to health. And so I think this Jets offense is definitely trending the right direction. They've won 2 in a row. They're looking to win 3. In the next couple of weeks, I think they play Buffalo, so they got to get their win total up there. And I think the sense of urgency there in New York is up there. I've been to a Jets game before. They go crazy when their team's good and their team's bad. So I was there when they were bad, and now they're really good. And so they're going to be ruckus ready to go. And so I have the Jets winning 27-3.
23. Okay, so they dominate. All right,
Yeah.
very interesting. They pull out a like what they did to the Patriots 2 weeks in a row. I think that's interesting. With the Braylon Allen take, it's very spicy, and literally, it would be perfect in a perfect world. Could go back in time to April in the draft, and the Dallas Cowboys could draft Braylon Allen, and we would be so happy for fantasy. It would be so great.
He would be Kyron 2.0. He would be a lead
literally.
winner.
He's bigger. He's stronger. I mean, he's same speed almost. I mean, look at that, like Jerry Jones. I mean, anyway, I do have the Jets winning though as well. I have them winning 24-14. So I think they do kind of handle their business at home. We got 2 more games to go. Moving to the next game, we got the Eagles at Tampa Bay, and this game's interesting. So Tampa Bay, real quick, you're starting Mike Evans, you're starting Chris Godwin. You're starting Baker Mayfield. I think he's due for a good game after a really porous one last week. Then you have the running backs. I believe both are actually questionable if I'm not wrong. So they're heading into this week. Or actually, it's just Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving's questionable. If he's out, Rachaad White, you got must start. And if Bucky plays, you have to start Rachaad White, I think, but you're more like which has kind of been the story of Rachaad White this year. But I think he's in your lineup. Bucky Irving, with the whole injury thing, he was limited. Now he's non-practice on Thursday, so I'm probably out just this week. And then on the Eagles side, you got to start Jalen because he's your quarterback 1. You got to start Saquon. And now that A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are out, Dallas Goedert is a must start, probably my highest rated tight end on the week. I think he's in line for, obviously not 10 for 170, but he's going to be getting the targets this week. And then to me, it leaves room for one more name. And I think a very good sleeper out there is Jahan Dotson this week. With him being now the de facto wide receiver 1 for Philly, I think he's in line to get, 6 to 10 targets. And in a game that I think Tampa Bay is going to be scoring and Philly's going to need to be catching up or at least being competitive back and forth, I think Jahan Dotson's in line for a very solid outing.
Yeah, Justin, I actually like that. I'm encouraging everybody who plays, DraftKings and daily fantasy there to kind of consider putting Jahan Dotson there. I'm not really know what his salary is looking like there. I'm pretty sure it's cheap there for all DraftKings slates there. But this game, Justin, I think is going to be a tad bit low scoring. I think all game, kind of what we saw last week in Philadelphia against the Saints, low scoring all game, firecrackers kind of at the end of the game. And I think that's going to be kind of the story. There's no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith, so it's going to be relying on Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and Dotson there to kind of, move up there in volume. And, looking at what else they have there, Dallas Goedert had a great game last week. And, Johnny Wilson, this might be the Johnny Wilson game. I know that's a deep, deep sleeper there. But a guy, they drafted this year out of Florida State who, we like Justin. We thought he was a very underrated wide receiver there. Justin, it would have been so nice if Anais Smith wasn't on IR, our Sub-Zero guy out of A&M. He won't be playing this game. Would have loved to see an Anais Smith breakout game, Justin. Oh, man, what a missed opportunity there with Devontae and A.J. Brown. Oh, that sucks so bad, Justin. Anyways, I'm going to pick the winner of this game. I think Saquon struggles the first half, but I think he has a dominant couple drives late in the second half, prevails Philly to win 24-19. I do think Mike Evans scores a big-time touchdown. I think Godwin gets a numerous amount of catches there. But, with Rachaad White kind of struggling there, that offensive line struggling in Tampa Bay, I think Philly's pass rush as well, led by Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and one of Philly's greatest, Brandon Graham, N'Kobe Dean's up there, Josh Sweat. And I like that secondary to kind of pester Mike Evans and Godwin just a little bit. Obviously, like I mentioned, Mike Evans does still score a touchdown, I believe, but I think they just do just enough to, let Baker struggle. And you know me, I love Jalen Hurts, and I kind of hate Baker Mayfield, so I can't take Baker over Jalen Hurts here. I got to go with my heart. Philly wins 24-19.
All right. I have the Buccaneers winning this 27-21. It's just the receiver issue. Jalen Hurts has struggled even with these receivers in the offense with being, accurate and making plays down the field. It's going to be a heavy reliance on Saquon. And I think Tampa Bay knows that. So I think they're going to win 27-21. It's going to be close, though. Moving to our last game in the first part of our fantasy forecast, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and the Carolina Panthers. Andy Dalton gets a revenge game against his former team at home. And I think it's going to be interesting. I know Deontay Johnson's coming in questionable, but if he's a play, he is a must-start. Chuba Hubbard, you stole him from me. I was trying to pick him up off waivers this week. Somehow he was on our waiver wire. You picked him up, and now he's in your lineup against me, and I'm so sad because I think he's a great play. And then I think that you could start Andy Dalton. I think he's worth the streaming start, maybe a DFS play for you guys, or if you just need him in your regular lineups, I think he is going to be pretty solid. We saw Jaden Daniels throw everywhere he wanted to against Cincinnati on Monday. And so I think Andy Dalton's a great play. And then on the Bengals side, you start Burrow, huge start for Burrow. Another big Jamar Chase Burrow game. I think Zach Moss is worth a good start. And I think T. Higgins is also worth a start. He was very close to scoring a touchdown like twice on Monday night. And so I think this is kind of the week he kind of gets back in it. He's been full goes from all, most of the week. So I think he's good there. And I think the last kind of name maybe people are considering is Gesicki. Mike Gesicki worth a start. I know I had to pick. I'm starting him against Genoa this week because Trey McBride's injury. It's not something I'm like crazy excited about, but it is a good matchup against the Panthers, and I think it's going to be throwing back and forth. So he's worth the start. Maybe he'll fall in the end zone.
Yeah, Justin, I actually kind of like, this matchup to be a potential shootout. We have two storylines here on both sides. One, obviously, Andy Dalton, a former Bengal. You can consider him a top 7, 8, 9, maybe Cincinnati Bengal. He was there for so long, Justin. Yeah. Him and AJ Green were a great tandem there. I know Tyler Boyd was there for a couple years. And Andy Dalton was a guy that was always trying to get Cincinnati a playoff win. I think it was 4 or 5 straight wildcard losses. But he brought that Bengals team, back to relevance because the Bengals were good a little bit in the 80s, made a couple Super Bowl appearances, and then they weren't good for a long, long time. Probably around the time that Carson Palmer got there, around 03, 04. with Chad Ochocinco, and they struggled. They became terrible. And then, Andy Dalton got there, coached by Marvin Lewis, and they were the story of that division. They gave Baltimore the run. They gave those tough Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger and Troy Polamalu tough runs. And, that's the storyline. It would have been better if it was in Cincinnati. I think it would be more to the heart there. But I think, Andy Dalton has kind of faced them. I think he faced them once as a member of the Dallas Cowboys that year that Dak was out to that knee injury. And so here they are once again a few years later. And that's one story. On the other side, it's Joe Burrow, those Cincinnati Bengals that are 0-3, a team that has been able to challenge those reigning champion Chiefs. Obviously, last year, they were on a playoff hiatus because of the injury to Joe Burrow, but they're 0-3, Justin. And they're worse than the Browns in that division. The Browns look awful. So, the Bengals lose on Monday night, and they are desperate for a victory. Things are turning south for the Bengals. It seems that everybody's angry. Jamar Chase does not seem pleased. T. Higgins looks to be on the way out, possibly out this year. And who knows? I mean, I love Zach Taylor as a head coach, but I mean, might have to question if he might be on the hot seat. I know that's a spicy take that he could be on the hot seat, but if they lose this game, I mean, Justin, I don't know if you agree, but he could be on the hot seat there, Zach Taylor. And Carolina, what they did last week in Vegas looks pretty good. Thielen is going to be out for this game in the next couple of weeks, but let's see if Carolina can replicate their performance, because Cincinnati does have a stout defense. I know they got shredded by Jaden Daniels last week, but they have a history of bouncing back. So, hopefully this is a game that, Cincinnati can win and get on to the next. And I'm going to give them this victory here. I think that Joe Burrow does have a great game. I also think that Zach Moss has a great game. And, T. Higgins, he didn't, he's not far. He didn't go to school far from, this stadium here in Carolina there. Clemson, he was a star in Clemson, and I feel like he's kind of close to home there. I think that he could have a pretty decent game. I'm starting him in our elite league. I just feel like the matchup is pretty good, and it's time for a T. Higgins game. So I like the Bengals. I like them 27-17.
27-17 Bengals. I like that. I'm gonna go with 35-28. I think it's going to be a phenomenal back and forth game. Yeah, I think the Bengals are very desperate to get that victory. They're 0-3, man. It's crazy to hear that through 3 weeks, especially when you looked at their schedule early on. You're like, okay, the Commanders and the Patriots. What the heck? But they're 0-3, so, and they get the Panthers. So I think it will be exciting, though. I think Andy Dalton and this Panthers offense is actually, that's the real deal. I think they're going to start cooking, and it's going to be back and forth. But Cincinnati gets a much-needed victory. And that wraps up part 1 of Fantasy Forecast. That's 8 games. So if you're interested in these 8 games, which we covered the Cowboys and the Giants and the Saints and the Falcons and the Rams and the Bears and the Vikings and the Packers and the Steelers and the Colts, the Broncos, the Jets, Philadelphia and Tampa Bay, as well as Cincinnati and Carolina. That is what this episode is including. And then we got the rest of the games in Fantasy Forecast Part 2. So stay tuned for that. And Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation, thank you guys for watching. Go ahead and click next up to Part 2, because that's where there's some more juicier games there as far as fantasy implications as well. So, Dween Nation, we love you guys. Thanks for watching. And as always, peace.